A space expedition gone wrong, a crashed ship, and a player lost and abandoned on a distant alien world. Population Zero is a new upcoming sci-fi themed game that is due to go into closed beta on the 19th of September. Now, this title has had some pretty rapid development so far. Announced last year and in alpha since early 2019, Population Zero is a hybrid between MMO, survival and classic sci-fi. And it really is the classic sci-fi element that particularly got my interest, at least initially here. The artwork is very nice after all, reminiscent of a lot of pieces from the 70s and 80s. The game itself, from a footage point of view at least, from what we've seen so far, certainly looks to be quite faithful to the concept art. Now, being classified as an MMO means that traditional questing is a thing, but the survival element, meanwhile, brings base building to the front. Quests in Population Zero are aimed at introducing players into the world, as well as revealing the game's overall story. The quest system will eventually lead players towards choosing between one of the game's factions, and will also reveal the rather intriguing Mutation System, and more on that in just a bit. Quests have also been designed in such a way as to encourage players to meet up with each other. Now, the developers have been keen to point out that Population Zero isn't a theme park game, however, and they are billing it as a sandbox title, and this means that there should be a number of open world opportunities for players to pursue. Survival games are of course a huge thing nowadays, so most people will probably know the drill of what to expect. But what interests me here are the MMO elements, although that said, in my opinion, the label MMO is misused all over the gaming industry nowadays, but maybe I'm just old-fashioned. For me though, MMO means huge numbers of players, whether that's going back to the days of Ultima Online or current titles such as EVE or Warcraft. Nowadays it seems that anything with just a handful of players is classed as an MMO for some reason, but maybe that's just me. Anyway, here the developer Nplex have confirmed that hundreds of players will be able to run on a server at the same time, and it appears that private servers are not going to be a thing here, at least as far as I could see. So yes, as I was saying, what interests me here are the MMO elements and how they form a hybrid of sorts with the more traditional survival games. A good example of this is the proposed trading system. Now, initially at least, player-to-player trading won't be a thing. However, the game will have a global trading system, and this will take the form of a global barter market. Yes, bartering is a real thing in the game, meaning that everything is a currency. And this, to me, is a very interesting take on trading. It potentially allows for the creation of a very unusual and unique player economy. Bartering will take place at trading posts, and players are able to construct these themselves. The world that players find themselves in is known as Kepler, and as to be expected, it is a hostile environment. However, much of it can be used to the player's advantage, either by integrating with it or by exploiting it, depending on your approach. And the surface size of the world will be around 24 kilometers squared on release. There'll also be caves, which are in addition to the surface area, and also the jungle biome allows players to use the tree canopies as further space. The developers have stated that there will be other biomes in the future, and they have briefly discussed underwater areas. Now, in survival games such as this, players face many threats, from thirst and starvation all the way to combat and death. And the developers are looking at things in a slightly different take, at least in regards to combat here. In fact, many different elements of the game do seem to have a slightly unique approach. Now, for combat specifically, the aim here is not to include the age-old health bars on enemies. Instead, the player will see visual cues on the enemy, such as wounds, which will convey to the player the current state of the target. Combat itself is non-target action-based, and the game has both PvP and a PvE focus, so players will certainly die, and this leads us on to the Mutation System. Each time a player dies, they are resurrected, however their DNA will change a little. Eventually, this will accumulate to the point where the player may no longer be human, and at this point the player will have the option of choosing between various forms based on the influence of the nature of the planet Kepler. So mutation really does sound like an interesting system, however it won't be available to all players, and this is simply due to the fact that it's a function of a specific faction known as the Xenobiotes. Now, there are two factions available for players to join. Each faction has its own set of technology, crafting mechanics, and perks. These two factions are known as the Technocrats and the Xenobots. The Xenobots seek to live in harmony with the planet and nature, whilst the Technocrats seek to exploit it, and this will influence the gameplay and how players interact with each faction. The game appears to have a heavy focus on clans and encourages players to work together, and all players within a clan need to be members of the same faction. Clans are granted a building area within the game's map, and within this area the players, or the clan rather, can construct a clan complex. Building isn't limited to just clan complexes however, and players will be able to build personal structures in separate areas. As the game has a PvP focus, building, destruction and claiming of territory are very much a thing. And regarding how building works itself, it does appear that it follows the established formula for building in many other games of the same genre. However, there's also some interesting takes here as well. Weaker materials, for example, do not provide for a good foundation, so don't expect to be able to build towers out of straw as they will collapse under their own weight. Building technology can be improved over time as players unlock improved research, and this will allow players to construct ever stronger and more visually impressive buildings. And building tech isn't the only thing that can be upgraded, as Population Zero features a hefty character perk system. Perks are obtained through gameplay, although players will not be led by the nose to these, and instead will have to discover how to obtain the perks for themselves. The perks will come in 3 categories, and whilst perks can, at a cost, be converted to permanent perks, by default many of them will be temporary. Temporary perks can be lost upon death, and even claimed by other players. Perks that are converted over to a more permanent basis, however, will not be lost upon death. The third category of perk allows players to store them in a safe location. It seems then that perks will allow for a flexible and dynamic character build. Currently, access to Population Zero is behind a paywall that starts at £8 to get into the closed beta on the 19th of September. 2 other packages also exist, priced at £16 and £40, and these come with various benefits. According to an article over at Massively OP, Population Zero will be free to play when it fully releases in 2020, although the official FAQ states that no decision has yet been made on this. However, it's quite possible that that particular page on the website was outdated. You can find more information linked in the video description below. It's well worth taking a look at the website. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.